here today. My name is Maureen Loughran. I am the CFA field representative for the California Faculty Association, or CFA, as you'll hear in the presentation today. And we are the union that represents the faculty in the Cal State University system. And I'll introduce and let others introduce themselves here. We have SQE speakers, and SQE stands for Students for Quality Education. And we have chapters on every CSU campus. Josue Chavez is one of our student interns, and Naomi Martin was just hired on as another intern. And then we have some speakers from CFA today, Audrina Redman on the end, and Luna Lund. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just let you all introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what CFA is and what SQE is.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josue Chavez, and I'm currently an SQE intern, Students for Quality Education. And yeah, SQE started with the advocacy from CSU students, right? They advocated for a program that can involve work that involves the increase of quality education, right? And one of our focuses right now is just the increase in advocacy for mental health resources for students. And the question that all of us ask is where is the money going to come from? Well, one of the pits where we can, take some money from is from the police department, right? I know that can be scary to hear, but you're going to hear a little bit more about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naomi. I just recently got hired as an intern for SQE. I use she, they pronouns. I'm very, very excited to be here and to be a part of and represent SQE. I joined this organization and I applied for this internship because I believe in just fighting for things that I'm very passionate about, especially education, as someone who is studying to become an educator. And I believe in giving a voice to the voiceless, and that is something that I believe that I can help do here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luna Lund. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Central California Student Organizing Coordinator for CFA. So I supervise interns on 9 of the CSU campuses, including Sonoma. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we're working on right now in terms of legislation to get more mental health services on all of our campuses, and the work that our interns are doing all over the state to make that happen.
Greetings and good happy afternoon. My name is Audrina Redman. I am the Director of Anti-Racism Social Justice Programs for the California Faculty Association. And for anyone here who may be visually impaired, I am an African-American woman with salt and pepper hair, which is definitely trending more salt these days. Mm-hmm. And I am the color of coffee with some cream and sugar.
All right. Well, what we wanted to do today was I'll even go back a couple slides, talk about how students and faculty can unite. And we're especially uniting around many different issues, which our panelists will talk about today, mental health resources on the campus, and just community wellness and to make folks feel more safe on the campuses, right? That's why we had you do that little exercise at the beginning, what safety means to you, okay? And we are united, faculty and students, using our people power, using our legislative power in the government, using media power, research, legal power, all of these different organizing tactics to try to achieve some of our goals. So what we'll do now maybe is we'll see if you can change to the website where people put in what safety meant to them. You can see what's called a word cloud here. Let's see what you all put in. We might have, there it is. Let's see, I'm trying to read some of the words, if we can make it a little bigger. Did anybody see the words that they put in there? If you want to just yell out some of the words that you see. What did folks type in here? What do you see up there that you wrote? Don't be shy.
What's the difference between the size of the words?
Oh, thank you. The more people put in a certain word, the bigger it shows up in this word cloud. Has anybody used this before? By show of hands? Lots of folks. Yeah. Okay. So protection, right? Security, calm, secure, care, I see. Protected and protection, close, right? Safe surroundings, I like this.
Make it bigger.
Trying to- yeah,
I can't see
So
it.
hard to see some of these. People must have put in a lot of different things too.
Yeah.
Being
like-
fearless. Having good bank account, interesting. Access to shelter with walls.
Someone said
Mm.
police.
Yeah, someone said police, thank you. Family, justice. Secure access to food. Mm,
No fear.
everything. Great.
Home. I like home.
All right. So let's see, well, we can go back to the PowerPoint. All right, we did our introductions. And then let me see, what I'll do here is I'll turn it over to Josue to talk a little bit about the Students for Quality Education campaigns.
Thanks, Maureen. Yeah, so the campaign has been mostly focused on, of course, advocating for CAPS and not COPS. We have been seeing recently that there's a lot of advocacy happening around to where if we just simply fund access to mental health resources, we can actually just prevent from major events that are really, really devastating, right? To happen in the first place, right? And right now we're finding ourselves in a time where our current CAPS offerings, right, of mental health services is not properly being funded right now. I know that Naomi is going to speak a little bit more about her experience and how that has been looking like for her, and also as an experience that can be a monument that a lot of students share, right? A lot of people say that when they reach out, it takes a while to access these resources, right? And if you all wouldn't mind, you can actually go into that QR code right now. It's going to take you directly to a website, right? If you pull out your phones, you can like scan it up and check it out for yourselves. It's something that we've been working on, kind of asking these really important questions of simply, what does safety mean to you, right? How can that look like? How does that feel, right? What would that mean for the people around you, right? The people that you care about here at SSU. And as you kind of like pass through that website, you can see, you know, some nice pictures, images, and a little story from a friend of mine, just kind of like talking a little bit more about what safety means to them, right? And these conversations are really important to have right now as we imagine and think about, what does safety mean? How can we recreate it in ways that actually prevents most of the harm that we see happen in front of us, right? Between the community members that we find ourselves interacting with on campus, and also recognizing that, hey, clubs located here on campus are a safe hub for students to feel connected, to find their communities, right? How can we strengthen these already created communities in ways that can be transformative, healing, and can lead us into lives that feel fulfilling, right? And exciting, fun lives, right? And as we can see here clearly too, we've worked on highlighting really important resources that you can already access today. The California Warm Line is a peer run line service where you can call for free 15 minutes, right? 3 times a day, and talk to someone about what you're going through, as confidential as it could get, right? And then we have the Sonoma State University student resources that a lot of students don't even bother looking at because, hey, it's kind of taboo reaching out for help, right? And then there's 211, a service where anyone can contact for free and get immediate access and information to resources when you find yourself unhoused, right? When you're looking for just food, shelter, that kind of thing. We think that it's really important to kind of lay out what's already happening over there in the world instead of kind of reinventing that wheel, right? And I'm just really, really emphasizing that point that care is already existing. The care is already providing support that is actually meaningful, that's actually packed with a lot of quality, love, kindness, understanding, that we can all access today after this meeting right now, right, as you see fit.
Part of this journey in talking about and advocating for mental health services includes a lot of things like looking at and talking to students. So part of what we're going to do today is that I'm actually going to share you my story with my mental health journey, specifically with CAPS. So I'm a fourth year here at Sonoma State. I'm an English major, women and gender studies minor. I do a lot of things. But my freshman year, I still remember it very, very vividly. My very first big night, when I first came to SSU, I was extremely depressed. I was closeted. I was still dealing with very strict mindsets from growing up in the church and growing up in the area that I did. And that first big night, I was really struggling because my two friends that I had come to Sonoma State with, they had already bonded with their new roommate. And we were hanging out with her, and I was feeling very, very insecure. My social battery was super low. It was just kind of a recipe for disaster for me mentally, because I had barely interacted with my roommates, and I left big night like 20 minutes in. I left super early. I just wasn't feeling it. I was feeling very, very low, very down about myself. I had a stressful experience during my training the other day before, because I was working on campus, and I got back to my dorm that night and I was in a very, very dark place. One of my roommates ended up actually calling the RAs because I mentioned that I was honest with them that I was struggling with thoughts of suicide that night. And that night I ended up with both on-call RAs. I ended up with 2 cops and the area coordinator in my dorm room. Literally, people were still out celebrating big night, going out to parties and stuff. And I'm hanging out with cops and the RAs in my room because I just didn't want to exist anymore. But because of that, I was able to get connected with CAPS straight away, literally, because the day after big night, semester starts. So I was extremely lucky in that because I got connected with CAPS the very next morning and I got scheduled. I did some evaluations and got scheduled for my first appointment with CAPS. But I am the exception and not the rule, because most people have a really, really hard time getting in with CAPS. I've heard of people taking just a couple of days to get in with CAPS and get an appointment, some people weeks. And I know people personally where it's taken them months to be able to get connected with a therapist on campus. And that, for someone who is going through a mental health crisis, that's simply just not okay. Of course, CAPS does provide like crisis appointments in case of emergencies, and they do have a hotline that's provided, but it's not the same as weekly care. And even that isn't something that CAPS can fully provide because we only get a certain amount of appointments each semester because we get a certain amount each year. And that usually leads to like appointments once a month or so, every couple of weeks. And for a lot of people, including myself, that's not very feasible. I'm someone that definitely needs to be seen at least once a week, maybe every other week. And so being seen monthly isn't something that's not in the right cards for them. And so I believe personally as well, that we need to better support CAPS. They need more funds. They need more therapists. They need more people who can get in there to help people, because our CAPS therapists, they're fantastic. I have loved the therapists and people that I have worked with in CAPS, but we need a lot more of them. They need better support because they can't do something like they can't prescribe me anything. They can't help me get the ESA that I'm searching for. They can't help me quite enough with the struggles that I've been dealing with getting diagnosed with an extremely rare disease earlier last year. Those are things that I need more help for. And while CAPS does provide resources like that, we need more stuff on campus that are free and more easily accessible for the students here.
Thank you so much, Naomi. So to talk a little bit more about CFA and what we do, we are the union that represents faculty at the CSU, at every CSU, all 23 campuses. And one of the things that we are gearing up for is bargaining. And while, of course, we focus on issues of workload, pay, making sure that faculty have all of the resources that they need to thrive, we also are an anti-racist and social justice-based union. So I wanted to touch on, in the word cloud, police was there, right? But I think what is really important is to remember that while the police might feel safe to some people, there are so many students on our campuses that feel so much more unsafe with police there. And there is a huge disparity in the budgets of our university police departments and our mental health care. So when we say that we want to, take funding from the police budgets and put it into CAPS, that is really about making marginalized students feel safer. It's about preventing events that could be prevented with better mental health care. And that's why we have been so focused on what I'm going to talk about next, Senate Bill 11. So SB 11 is the legislation that our interns have really been focused on right now, our SQE interns at all of our campuses. And it was proposed by Senator Menjivar. And this bill it actually just passed the Education Committee 6-0 last week, thanks to the work of our interns and other students giving testimony at that committee meeting. And it is going to move on to the Health Committee this month. So what this bill would do is it would require every CSU to have a minimum of one full-time equivalent California licensed mental health counselor to 1,500 students enrolled. And where we got that ratio is the International Accreditation of Counseling Services. So based on their criteria, that is the minimum amount of mental health counselors that we should have, one to every 1,500 students. And right now, most of our campuses do not meet that ratio. And that leads to longer wait times for people to get that mental health care that they need. And it also means that our counselors are expected to do a lot more work than they should be expected to do. Another thing that this bill would do is it would require the development of a telehealth mental health counseling service that would provide students with 24/7 access. So there have been many cases of students having crises, needing care at late times in the evening, late at night, early in the morning, and they just can't access counseling services at school. So this telehealth service would ensure that students get the help that they need at the moment that they need it, and would also allow counselors to have flexible schedules and choose what times work for them to be doing that work, and give a lot more flexibility in those work hours. And we also want these counselors to represent the diversity of our students at the CSU. We want them to be trauma informed, culturally competent, and we want these to be full-time positions. And yeah, this is work that our students and our interns have been working on a lot. We've been working on postcards to send to legislators, petitions, text banking, testifying at committee meetings, posting on social media, and we will be lobbying for this bill at lobby days later this month. And yeah, so this is an issue. The counseling ratio issue is something that was created by the CSU. In past bargaining, the union has requested better counseling ratios, has requested more counseling services and better workload expectations for our counselors. And they have refused to bargain around that. They have also contracted out to other counseling services that do not serve our students in the way that we want them to. Right now, there is a PERB charge against CSU for contracting out without bargaining. And PERB is Public Employee Relations Board, so that they deal with like labor issues. And so because the CSU contracted out without bargaining with us as the union, that's a huge issue. And we're in legal process with them right now because of that. And this company that they've contracted out with, Timely MD, they have been pushing really hard to be at every CSU campus. And it's been a big issue because this company is Texas-based. They're really a gig model. So the counselors working for them are not getting the pay and benefits that they deserve either. And it is heavily affiliated with Christian organizations. And there have been cases of LGBTQ plus students looking for help from this company and getting counselors that have discriminated against them and told them to seek God. And, you know, as an LGBTQ plus person myself, I think that is really horrible to have to hear, especially if that person has religious trauma. So Timely MD is a huge issue. But the bottom line is that the CSU should not be contracting out without bargaining and without discussing that with the union. So as we move into bargaining, we are going to be requesting that the 1 to 1,500 counselor to student ratio is met. We are going to continue even after this bargaining to advocate for that. And this is one of many issues that affects both students and faculty and staff. We need more mental health support and students need that support without having to rely on contracting companies that do not have any accountability. And counselors need to have the support, the pay, the benefits that they need to thrive and succeed in helping our students. So that's a little bit about what we've been working on. Thank you.
Ooh, that's a lot. It's a lot of terms, a lot of legislative work, a lot of student organizing, a lot of faculty caring. And I say faculty because reminding folks that it is the California Faculty Association, which is the union that represents the almost 30,000 faculty now who teach in the 23 Cal State campuses. And I always start with, so why do these people care? Why do they care about caps, not cops? Why do we care enough to have established our own committee called the Community Wellness Committee? Why do we care? We care because faculty and students are symbiotic, have a symbiotic relationship, right? If anybody ever watched Star Wars, the symbiotes anyway. Star Trek. But so what happens with students on campus very much impacts faculty. What happens with faculty on campus very much impacts students. Did the volume change? It very much impacts each other. And so, you know, so CFA for many, many years now has been engaging in organizing work with students and has did the work of transforming itself into an anti-racism and social justice union. And so what does all of that stuff mean? It means that we started to see ourselves not as fighting just for the bread and butter stuff, like for faculty pay, right? But for actually fighting for the care of the community, fighting for you, fighting with you, fighting for faculty, fighting with faculty for the things that build the kinds of community environments that we want. Those kinds of community environments, both on campus, because this is, you know, campus is its own world, but also the external campus. And that's critical because that's where we all come from, right? We all come from the world out there and we bring into the university ourselves and who we are. And sometimes, I mean, I know surely for me, when I entered my undergrad, all kinds of things came up because it was the first time I was independent and free to think and be whoever I was. And though I didn't go to school in California, I too had issues accessing CAPS services on my university campus, and I just gave up on it because it was like impossible. And even though we're fighting through SB 11 for a counselor ratio of 1,500 students to one counselor, do you see that imbalance? That's still too many students to one counselor, right? It's too much. It's too much, and it's not fair to you or to the people with whom you're in community with on campus. So CFA in this model, we tried to negotiate in our last contract round with the CSU to build what we were calling, or what came to be called, stakeholder work groups that would take a look at this issue and figure out how can we build safe communities for students that did not involve the police. Why is it important to not involve the police? I don't know about you, but every time some big major event happens and someone has been shot by the cops, for example, a lot of times that person has a mental health issue. The police were called, and because police are not trained to de-escalate a situation, they come in and they hype the situation up. And I don't know about you, if you've ever seen anyone in a mental health crisis, that is not the time to show up as a threat to someone. It's not. So we realize that there have been many incidences on our campuses where that has happened. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to ask by show of hand, but maybe you've been in a class and one of your fellow students has had a mental health crisis, has just started crying, has just started, being very emotional in class, or just broken down some kind of way. And the only alternative that faculty have on the campus, because of resources that are not into CAPS or not into trauma-informed teams or crisis response teams, is to call the cops, right? Then the person is forcibly removed from campus. A whole lot of other drama happens. Now they have a charge. Now, it's not a good situation. And so the CSU in this bargaining about this did not see it the same way that we do, still don't see it the same way that we do, which is why we keep engaging in pieces of legislation to move them in the direction that is community wellness focused. And so we have another bill, a bill that was signed by Assembly Member Mike Gibson just last year, Assembly Bill 1997, which requires them to meet with stakeholders to discuss creating resources that help the community for non-violent, non-criminal incidences, which, by the way, is most of what happens on a university campus. Okay, the most cops mostly are involved in bothering you, and they're bothering you when you're partying, or they're bothering you when you have a parking ticket, right? But do we need them to have AR-15s in their cars for that? No. Do you need cops even for that necessarily? No, you do not. So Assembly Bill 1997 is now forcing the CSU to come to the table. We are very happy to be among those stakeholders who will be at the table. Let me say that the bill exists because CFA pushed for the bill and lobbied for the bill and identified a legislator, again, Assembly Member Mike Gibson, who would carry the bill. So specifically, this committee had to be formed by July. After much pushing on the CSU for the last 10 months, they have finally begun the work of identifying persons who will sit on this committee. I think CFA will be represented quite well by Dr. Sharon Elise from Cal State San Marcos, who is a fierce warrior. That's all I'm going to say about that. So I have great faith in her. But so just to reiterate, the AB 1997 requires counseling reinvestment, right? So that we, instead of having a counseling student ratio of 1,500 to 1, I mean, let's dream a little bit. How about we have 50 to 1,500, right? That way you can see somebody and see people on a regular basis. And you always start high, right? You never start low, start high. So I said 50, I'll go for 100 even. But we also need some training around here, and not just for police officers, but in tactics of de-escalation, right? Our culture, unfortunately, the clapback culture, is all about escalating everything, and nobody's listening to anybody, which means we're always in conflict with each other, right? Which is why we end up kind of in the situation that we're in. So we want to engage in some de-escalation practices here on our campuses. We need trauma-informed people, folks who understand and can identify a trauma situation or responses people are having in reaction to trauma. We need crisis response teams to respond to non-criminal health and safety issues. Again, think about any friend you may have had who has had a crisis moment in the classroom, in the dorm rooms, in the dorms, in the cafeteria, in their car. Personally, when I was undergrad, I used to go to my car and do a lot of screaming because I was frustrated with things, and that was where I could do it, and nobody would call 5150 on me. You know what I'm saying? And we also would like these crisis response teams to be separate and distinct from university police. We want all of this to be separate and distinct from the university police, not run or facilitated, guided, led, any of that by the university police, because again, we do not see the notion of community wellness in alignment, or the notion of health and safety in alignment with current policing practices. So yeah, so that's a little bit about CFA and Assembly Bill 1997.
Paying around budget info requests on the campuses that you know about this.
Oh yeah, sure. So thank you for the reminder. So as part of as I said, CFA was the impetus and the sponsor and the coercer, whatever word you'd like to say, for the passage of AB 1997. But and so we'll have that stakeholders work group is forming, but we're not just sending a person sitting at this table, because that's never anything that you do. That person is backed up by a community wellness committee. And as part of that work, so that we have information that Sharon Elise will need when she's at this table, we have done something called a request for information. Basically, you know, as members of the public, as citizens, we have a right to request of state-funded institutions and organizations like the Cal State University public information. So public information's request, basically. And so we are pursuing on each of our campuses to know what the campus police budget is, what it's been for the last 5 years. What are the kinds of stops that they are involved in, where these stops are happening, who is being stopped, and the history of the officers in the departments. That stuff's important because a lot of cops come to campus after having worked for city departments or county departments, for example, and they come with that training and bring that training into this environment. It's also true that most stops or officer involved instances between university police and students happen actually not necessarily on campus. They happen in the area on the perimeter of campus where students live, hang out, you know, do your thing like you're supposed to do. So we want to know that information, and we want to know that information because, like everywhere else, the police budget never seems to get cut. Not even when your student fees are rising, not even when it costs you more just to be here, the police budgets increase. And to do what? What does that have to do with your education? What does it have to do with community wellness? What does it have to do with faculty having the resources to do their work, to interact with you, to provide you with the best education possible? And so we want to see, because we want to change these things, we want to put those resources back into community wellness, right? So back into changing that ratio of 1,500 to 1, back into student centers for you to be able to socialize with each other, for you to be able to build community with each other. And those are the kind of things that motivate you to stay when you're in environments that are not familiar. I mean, I think I was the first in the family that I know to leave home and go away to a 4-year institution. Is that other people here also? Any first timers in your family for going to school? And so I didn't know, no one had any guidance for me. Nobody knew what, I mean, they gave me basic guidance, but they didn't know what the experience was like, right? So I needed student resources. On many of our CSU campuses, those resources have been cut over the last years. And those resources were especially cut for the ethnic studies, or ethnic studies. So for Black students, for Latinx students, for API students, for women, for LGBTQIA+ students, resources for students with disabilities. All of those things have been cut, but not the police department budgets. So that's why we're engaging in the work, and that's why we've made the information request to help inform our community wellness committee, so that our stakeholder representative who will be at these meetings with the CSU representatives has the kind of information that will really make change. But let me say one final thing, and that is that, you know, we like to think that folks having information and you being right and just in your positioning is what wins, right? It's what will rule the day. It's what will change people's opinion. And the truth is, it is not. We can have all of that information, but what will be required is for every student in here and every faculty member in here and every staff member in here to become a part of the No Harm, Disarm campaign that's being facilitated by our interns here for Students for Quality Education. I'm doing my Vanna White here. So that, you know, when we need folks to show up, when we need folks to write a letter, when we need you to sign a petition, when we need you to do whatever it is that will push the CSU in the direction so that you all have, and the folks in here have what they need.
We can open it up to Q&A if you'd like. I'll say a little bit about bargaining on health and safety. CFA, as a labor union, what we do is we represent the workers. We represent the faculty workers in the CSU. And part of what we do is we bargain with the CSU a set of rules that lay out all their working conditions, salary, all those things. We have an article in that contract on health and safety, and we're really reimagining health and safety around what it means to have police on campus, around what safety means. That's why we did the exercise at the beginning, what safety means to you, right? It is about mental health resources and all those things. One of the things we tried to bargain for the last time was around having an ombuds person or somebody on campus that would help to do just conflict mediation. Like, a lot of things don't rise to the level of being needed to take care of in the OPHD office, right? But it's still an issue. It's not right. How do we have somebody identified to deal with that? That's something that our union's looking at. Right now, we're in the process of eliciting feedback from our membership. We send out a bargaining survey to all faculty, and we ask them to tell us, what would you like to see us bargain for? And that's the way we inform what we bargain for. And we'll go back to bargaining in May, the bargaining table. And again, it's Social Justice Week. So as you heard here today, a lot of the tactics that we employ are what we call our octopus, right? We have a goal in the middle and we use the media, we use legal, we use people power, we use our legislative power, we do it all. Postcard campaigns, all of those things to try to achieve our goal. And so if there's anything, I hope you learn at Social Justice Week this week, it's, be active, be engaged, everything is political. And you're all learning this as college students. So, we hope you get engaged with Students for Quality Education. They'll be around afterwards if you want to get involved with the group. There's always opportunity. And we are in coalition with many other organizations. We don't work alone. Nobody works alone. The presentation right before this, Terry Winter from Healthcare for All, somebody we're connected to through the labor movement, all the other unions around. So I want to encourage you to ask good questions. We're here and we have time to take anything you have to say. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Hello, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. I really appreciated it. I heard during the presentation, I forget who mentioned, but the interaction with CAPS is only 5 or 6 sessions per person. Is this bargaining going to include anything about possibly allowing for more sessions or a longer interaction with a therapist in any way?
I would hope so.
Yeah. We are still kind of formulating what our exact asks are going to be, but I think that is something to definitely take note of, and I think that's something that we can fight for. So thank you for bringing that up.
So if the ratio again is 1,500 to 1, that means when you go see someone, they have, all the counselors I know are like back to back, except for their lunch break, right? So if you have more counselors, that means there'll be fewer students, which may mean longer time to spend with the student and certainly more frequency to see students. That's the idea of reducing their student ratio load. It's the same thing in any situation. All of, many of you may have gone to public school. It's what your teachers were always saying. It's too many students in this classroom for me to give the kind of attention that I need, so it's just the same scenario.
I can also say that because CAPS is so limited in what they can offer, they do offer resources to help you find not insurance, but therapists outside of CAPS that take your insurance, or if you don't have insurance, find therapists that can work with you. They gave me some of those resources myself because I'm looking for a new therapist right now.
Hi, so really liked your presentation. So I actually have 2 questions. And they're separate topics. So the first question is, it was mentioned like during the CFA/SQE community wellness campaign slide, that crisis response teams are needed, that you guys advocate for crisis response teams that are needed for nonviolent mental health episodes for students. So what would be a good resolution for that are violent, like mental health episodes?
Yeah, even then, there may be a role for police, right? But let's think about, when do police show up in a violent situation? It's already happened, right? It's already happened. It was probably already in the brewing to happen because maybe there weren't resources to prevent someone from doing acts that might actually lead to hurting themselves or hurting other people or whatever, right? So again, people have to be doing work for which they are properly trained. Police are not properly trained to de-escalate a situation, but certainly we do need some response when things are violent, but that's the last step in the process. What we're going for is the front end, not the back end of what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my second question is, talking again about law enforcement and crisis response teams. So, and other programs, not even just those two, because other programs that you guys mentioned, should they work together, or would you guys want to keep it separate? Like keeping the police separate and keeping mental health crisis teams separate, or should they work hand in hand, like you said, like increasing training for de-escalation?
Well, no, the bill, Assembly Bill 1997, does cause for these teams to be separate and distinct from police departments. And that's important because, you know, we've been at the idea of reform and reforming police departments for the last 50-something odd years, ever since our police departments began the uptick in the war on crime, right? And even before then, it was an issue. So we've been at that for a long time, reforming police. That is like tinkering around the edges, but never getting at the problem, because the number of violent incidences between the police and community is up. Police department budgets are up. The militarization of police departments is up, including your campus police departments. I mean, I can't remember which campus now, but they're like rocking around with rocket launchers in the back of their cars and stuff. Why do you need that? To go break up a party? Why do you need that? So we don't see, given the long history, we don't see that as a viable solution. We would like to build these needs for our campus communities without the police, because they have nothing to do with policing. The fact that police are responsible for these things has proven to be nothing but problematic. And so, you know, we want them to do what it is that they're there to do and what they're trained to do, but not to do the things that counselors do, not to do the things that advisors do, not to do the things that faculty do, not to do the things that your student support organizations do. Yeah. Yeah, please.
And I'll say as well, I think the long-term goal is the reason that we want to build these community crisis intervention teams and have those alternatives is because we imagine a future without police, a future where those violent crimes are prevented because everyone has their basic needs met, because they have their mental health cared for. So right now, obviously, it's not going to be tomorrow there's no police, and that wouldn't be the solution. But I think that is the long-term goal that we're working towards.
I have a couple questions and an observation. Don't we as students already pay a CAPS fee every semester? Do we not also pay a student health fee every semester? So then why aren't the two combined into one with a different organizational chart, which therefore would spread out the resources a little bit further? Because we all know what's going to happen. The students are going to end up paying for this by rate hikes. And already there's students that can't afford to go to school. My second observation has to do with the police department. I'm sorry, I disagree with what you're saying. I would rather have an armed police department on campus that could possibly prevent somebody from coming on campus and start shooting people. And that's the way things are going now. People get frustrated, or they have mental health issues, or whatever the case may be. And the first thing people are reaching for is a gun. So I think gun control as a whole needs to be addressed, but not on the university level. But as far as the police department, when you're taking that money away from police departments, then they're also not able to offer services that are used every day. Traffic control, you know, dealing with issues on campus, security as far as when there's demonstrations. I mean, the police do more than just sitting at the police department eating donuts. I mean, I always see them out patrolling. I mean, it would be nice if they actually got out on campus and walked around and interacted with students. I mean, that might ease some of the issues. But as far as defunding, I mean, why can there not be law enforcement officers that are not only police officers, but are also trained to de-escalate? Thank you.
Yeah, well, one, thank you so much for sharing your concerns and, you know, providing those questions. As we begin to have these conversations of like, what ifs, right, of these very what if scenarios that are already happening, right, is that when we think about police, right, is that they are responding to the situation. What we are advocating in this work is how do we make sure that a student, a community member does not show up here and cause a massacre, right? How can we prevent these things to happen in the first place, right? That's part of the work that we're doing that is actually, helping out many students, right? And sometimes it's immeasurable, right? We can't really ask someone, hey, were you going to show up today to shoot up the school because you had access to mental health resources? You're probably not going to get a really clear answer. But the data shows, right? And as we hear these beautiful and really powerful anecdotes on how important it is to prevent, right, these really, really heavy moments in history that we're witnessing in many different campuses here in California, right? It's just like, whoa, right? And the current policy that we have around for police and how they respond to situations where, we have someone that's identified as an active shooter is that the police are not actually allowed to intervene at all. They have to wait. Yeah, it's a waiting game. Policy shows that police are supposed to respond to the situation, take a cool minute, right? Allow events to happen as they are, right? And then intervene in ways that, are not as effective as they should be, right? These conversations are heavy, they're packed, and we really appreciate, these critical questions that you're asking yourself. So, amongst you all, if you have these questions as well, ask them. And these are dialogues, right? These are dialogues that are boiling down to concerns that we all share, right? What does safety mean? How can we all contribute to this? How can we make it work for everyone, right? How can we make it safe for everyone? That's pretty much it. So thank you.
Yeah, can I just, I wanted to respond to the question about the funding too, about how students are paying for this, right? I know that there's money in the CSU. It's about where they use it, right? And that's part of, the whole real reason that faculty and students are aligned here is for quality, affordable, accessible education. I would love it if the CSU was free and the UCs were free, and they used to be a lot cheaper for students, right? CFA has, a phrase that we say, as the student population got darker, the funding got lighter. And that's what we've seen in California. It's really sad. And the money is there. It's just about how we use it. It's always an excuse, I think, for the high paid administrators in the CSU, many of the campus presidents, the chancellors, who none of you have probably ever had any actual interaction with in your educational careers in college, right? They make more than the governor of California. These people are making huge salaries. So there's money that can be used to prioritize you, your mental health, your needs on this campus that isn't being properly used at the moment in the system. And the government can, and we lobby for, together, students and faculty lobby for more funding from our state government for these kind of things. They do need to be funded so that students aren't paying for it, because it shouldn't be out of your pockets that this is where the money comes from to pay for more counselors. So, yeah.
Thank you, Maureen. I just want to say a little more about that. It's so normal for us to hear folks when we ask for something that we need, to hear people say, we can't afford that. Or do you know how much that costs, right? And then what they do is we end up pitting groups against each other. In this instance, it's the police department against the needs of students and the university community, right? That is called zero-sum thinking. That is when we think there's only so much money in the pie, there's only so much I can get, or I'm confined to this little sliver of what the budget says. No, throw out the budget, rewrite the budget, do the whole thing in a way that makes sense for you. That's what we're advocating for. When I said dream big, be futurist. What do you want? What do you need? Because that's the thing you should be fighting for, not what somebody is telling you you can't have. If somebody is telling you you can't have it, my question is, well, then where is it? And do you have it? And if you have it, give it back, right? So let's not engage in zero-sum thinking. Let's prioritize ourselves and what we need, because the powers that be have no problem finding the resources for their projects. We're getting ready to spend, I live in Long Beach. We're getting ready to spend $81 billion or something like that on high-speed rail that will go from not even the city of Los Angeles, that will go from Riverside County, which is a whole 90 minutes away, to Las Vegas. 10 years ago, when they first started talking about that project, it was half of that amount. So it was $40 billion, right? Don't tell me they don't have the resources. It's just about who has the power to use the resources in the way that they need. And that's why I'm saying to you that part of gathering that power and aiming that power is for you to engage with SQE and for faculty to engage with their faculty union to push and to have the kind of vision that we want for the CSU.
So I'm a very big advocate for mental health awareness and like police reform, but when you're talking about completely getting rid of the police force, it makes me think of like some crimes do not stem from mental illness. Some people are just committing crimes, like, you know, obviously sometimes it comes from poverty, it comes from needing money, when it comes to selling drugs and stuff. But if there's like a fentanyl outbreak and someone's lacing everybody with fentanyl, or if someone's going 50 miles an hour down the like crosswalks here, it's not really, you can't just be like, stop, do you need some help? There needs to be some discipline in community, as much as I believe in that the police force needs so much reforming. I feel like getting rid of it is a little bit far-fetched when it comes to actual like people hurting other people, and not just in a mentally ill way, just genuine crime, because it does happen. As much as it doesn't happen here because it's a very nice community here, there's so many other communities in, just even nearby that crime happens. So I don't know. I'm just wondering like what the plan is after if we were to get rid of police, where would the discipline be?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good
Can
question.
I ask you to put a pin in the response? We have 3 minutes left and we have one more question I want to get in. So can we get the second question in and then you can respond to both and wrap up? Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my question is pretty simple. I understand minimizing the police involvement with mental health crisis. I also understand that Sonoma State has gone into an agreement with the SAFE team in Sonoma County to start handling some of those situations. I've had some involvement with the SAFE team, having worked in the emergency room. And I have yet to see the SAFE team on campus. I have not seen their presence. I have not seen any information about them other than Sonoma State has an agreement with them to handle situations. I think it would be beneficial to maybe get that out there for campus members, students, faculty, to make them aware that that alternative to the police involvement is available.
Yeah, going back to the question, as we involve ourselves in this work and start to kind of like re-envision what safety means, is that, let's be clear and honest, it's not going to happen tomorrow. We're having dialogues on how we can slowly but surely transition into a form of safety that we actually need and that's effective, and preventative measures, right? Not responding to violence and not, inciting violence, yada, yada, yada. I grew up in East Oakland. I started doing, just advocacy work through the role of a student director for representing 36,000 students through the Board of Education of the Oakland Unified School District Board of Education. Basically what that means, there's a board of people that, vote on things that fund police, resources for just a district, right? Yeah. And so, through that work, I was having some conversations through some of my peers. And one of the things that one of the things that my peers shared with me is that they had a conversation with the chief of police, sorry, mixed it up. And the chief of police, they let them know Yeah. They let them know that most of the things that they are responding to, right, are just mental health moments, right, where someone needs someone else. And as we go along with this push, right, we can start to have those conversations about how do we actually respond to those people who want to commit crimes for fun, to actually harm other people that might not be directly mental health related. It's an ongoing process that you can start getting involved today, right? Like as we talk about these systems and communities and people, it starts with you, right? These systems start within us. So then how can we carry that into the spaces that we step into in our classrooms, right? Within our families, within our friends, between our friends, all that kind of thing. It starts within us, right? And so, you know, hopefully that shared something with you. And I don't know if someone wants to respond to.
I talk a lot, sorry. I have, you know, think about, when you think about safety, you made a distinction between communities. Why is one community safe? Hash air tags, right? And the other not. So the question we need to be asking ourselves all the time, you know, I don't know if you learned the who, what, when, where, why, how, is why? Why is that the case? Why is this community safe and this one not? And what are the situations, what is creating this and creating the crimes that come out of here that aren't happening over here? Or maybe they are, and we just aren't looking over here in the quote unquote safe community in the same way that we do the unsafe community, right? So to just, it asks you to always think about why.
And just to close out, I just want to say it is a change in culture that we're moving towards, a change in community and how we keep each other accountable rather than having hierarchy and powers that be discipline. And so it's going to take a long time. And I just want to thank you all for asking those questions, because those questions and having these conversations, having an imagination about what the future can be like, is how we get there. So thank you all for being here and for your questions.
Thank you, panelists. So if you can fill out the evaluation form, we need those for continuing to fund the event and pay our great speakers. We also like to take consideration for future speakers. Our next speaker is actually here, Stephen Arvelo. He's from Tribal Council. He's going to be talking about good fire and other Indigenous practices that he's involved in. And then we have tickets outside for tonight's big event at the Green Music Center. They're worth $25, but if you're interested, it is for Ijoma Olu's talk on So You Want to Talk About Race, her #1 selling New York Times book. And we're also going to have some free food and drink before in the Green Music Center green room. So we're going to be continuing similar conversations all week, and there's more food and drink Friday. So join us again Friday for that. And thank you. And thank you, Professor Reyes, for bringing your class.